There's so many situations in life that they happen for a season, but you cannot return to them. No matter how much you loved college life, the dorm room, you just can't go back and take a suitcase and move in. And I remember thinking, I wonder what this will be like to go back out. And those 2 or 3 shows were just so much fun, so magical.
Yeah.
Amy Grant and Michael W. Smith join us today on CIA, Contagious Influencers of America. I'm David Sams.
And I'm Victoria Robinson.
And Merry Almost Christmas.
Merry Almost Christmas, my favorite time of year. You know, whenever I start decorating, David? Before Thanksgiving. The reason why I love it so much and why are you going to put all that stuff up to enjoy for a couple weeks? Makes me feel good. And this interview today with Amy Grant and Michael W. Smith is going to be one of your favorites. How can you talk about Christmas without talking about these two?
Well, Amy, of course, is the queen of Christmas music. Michael and she have been together for 40 plus years.
Yeah, they've been friends for over 4 decades.
And they're going to talk about that friendship and what's kept them together. Amy is also going to talk about her grumpy husband.
Her grumpy husband. Only during Christmas season, which I find crazy because he always has this smile on his face. And
I just don't picture Vince Gill as being grumpy.
Either. Me neither. I never can. And I think the only thing that Amy and Michael haven't done is one of the favorite things I like to do the whole month of December, and that is be in a Hallmark Christmas movie.
They really should do that. That'd be a big ratings winner. But they have been touring. They've toured many times over Christmas, and they're doing that a little bit this year. And the really, really cool thing is this is the first time that we've had them in the studio together ever.
Mm-hmm, that's right.
I've had Amy here probably a dozen times over the last umpteen years. Michael's been here 7 or 8 times. But they have never actually been together. And to have these 2 iconic artists here at the same time.
Oh, I loved it. I loved that I was in town so I could be here.
Now, just I want to give you a little bit of heads up here. Amy's going to talk about something that I've never heard her talk about, and that is her somewhat controversial beginnings.
That's correct.
In the Christian music world, how they actually had to vote, how the elders had to get together and vote on whether or not she could get this. Bring a guitar to church.
Yeah, can you imagine that?
Here we go. Amy Grant and Michael W. Smith. So you're going back out on tour this year for Christmas.
Yes.
And you have done this many times. Doesn't it get old or never gets old?
It never gets old for me.
Me neither. But from the late 90s until about 5 years ago, Michael and I didn't tour together. And then it just, I think you called and said, you want to do a couple of Christmas shows. And, you know, there's so many situations in life that they happen for a season, but you cannot return to them. No matter how much you loved college life, the dorm room, you just can't go back and take a suitcase and move in. And I remember thinking, I wonder what this will be like to go back out. And those 2 or 3 shows were just so much fun, so magical.
Yeah.
And I do a lot of Christmas shows with my husband, Vince Gill. I'm crazy about him. He is so, he's so funny and like grumpy in a funny way about Christmas. And I mean, I would go back and forth over the last few years on the road between Michael and Vince, and I would think, oh my gosh, I have the best of every world. Michael, I don't think you've ever woken up one day in your life in a bad mood. You're so encouraging and so welcoming of all things celebrating the birth of Christ. And I'm crazy about my husband. I'll tell him some really intense spiritual experience I've had, and he'll go, well, it's settled. We have to get you a TV show. I mean, he is not going to lead the choir in Kumbaya. Oh my gosh, but it's just so great to be able to return to something years later and have it be even better.
Yeah.
See, I don't think that it could ever get tiring for them because your music never gets tiring for anybody else. So it's kind of timeless, right? So that's why I could see why these are the ones singing it. They walk on stage and get to do that together every year at the most awesome season in my opinion anyway, it's my favorite time of year, and share that. So how probably a lot of the same people keep coming back too. Even if you're singing some of the same songs, it doesn't matter. I never get tired of hearing Breath of Heaven. Never. And it gets me every time, whether it's July or December. So I think that I can relate why your audiences keep coming back. So thanks for keep coming back.
We're grateful. I mean, I think it's become really, it's more than just a show or concert. It's like an event.
Yeah.
And everybody dresses up. You know, they just went out to dinner. It's sort of their tradition, you know, especially when we return back to the, you know, places like Dallas or Minneapolis or Chicago. I mean, it's just, we're giddy. We walk up there and we look at each other and we're sort of smitten on some level. We're just going, we're kind of like little kids going, can you believe we get to do this? And can you believe how many people are out there? Like, this is insane. After doing it this many years, you know, sometimes you think, well, gosh, maybe it's time to pass the baton. And
when was your first Christmas concert together?
Well, that's what we're trying to figure out. I just vividly remember, obviously, you know, I've always wanted to do a Christmas record, you know, since I was 5 years old. But the first one that I kind of got to be a part of was Amy's first Christmas album. And
in the early 80s.
That was 83, 84. We were at Caribou Ranch in the middle of nowhere in Colorado. And I just still remember I remember doing Emmanuel, and I remembered a lot of stuff about that recording session. We were there for at least a week, you know. But I still can't. I mean, we'll have to go back and look at the archives and figure out when was the first show we actually really did together. I vividly remember us helping out the Nashville Symphony, which was Amy's brilliant idea when they were struggling, and said, let's just do a benefit concert. And the first show at Bridgestone Arena, when it opened in Nashville, was the Christmas show.
Wow, the very first show.
And I think that was either 98 or 99 or whenever that arena.
96.
It was 96.
So
okay.
we did the 93, 94, 95.
We did.
With the Nashville Symphony.
We did. That's
helped
true.
Get them back on track.
Yeah.
And then opened the arena in 96 and then started touring.
That's what we did.
97, 98.
You got a good memory, Amy. That's amazing.
You two first met in
80, 81.
It'd have been 81.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So you two have been through a lot together, right?
We've witnessed a lot of each other's lives.
Yeah. And you're still buddies. Yeah. That's amazing.
Well, it's so evident you guys like each other.
Yeah.
You know, that you can tell. You can feel like you're good friends. And I mean, what better to work with your good friend? You know, you can trust each other.
Yeah, I guess it's a rarity, isn't it? I mean, how often do you get to go on tour with somebody who you've known for almost 30 years? 40 years.
This will be your fourth.
It'll be 38 years.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? Even in the early days, speaking as just friends, you know, when we were on I think it was really the Straight Ahead tour. I'd cut the first record, and we were on the road together, you know, and I was opening for Amy. But we ended the night. Amy sang Friends. So I think Friends has become popular and due to the fact that Amy decided, hey, why don't we end the show with Friends? You know, and we did. I know that at least that one tour we did. So, sorry, I know we're talking about Christmas, but we're talking about friendship too.
We're talking about all the above.
Yeah.
So what is it that has kept you two together and strong all these years?
I think the experience of making music together, and there are times that we've made more music, there are times that we wrote together more, there are times that we toured more, but it's almost like being in parallel tracks to me. I mean, we have shared a lot of similar experiences with our families. I went to high school with Debbie, Michael's wife, but it's, you know, in the daily grind of life, we are not in each other's back pocket. And so when we come together, it's always doing something that we really like. You know, over and above all of that is the mutual respect we have for each other. It's always like, oh, Michael's going to be there? Okay, okay. But I felt that way when I was in high school. In college, and you had moved to Nashville, and you were starting to lead worship at Belmont Church. And I would, you know, any kind of fellowship group, it's whoever walks on stage, it can be a little bit of a moving target. and how that translates to the group experience with everybody in the congregation. And that's part of our being part of a spiritual community. But anytime Michael's on the platform, it'd be like, oh, okay, whew, all right, wherever he's going, I want to go there. And so I've been blessed, like a lot of people, to be in the audience when Michael was on stage, and it was in a more intimate setting. And, and I think because we've trusted each other, it's been like you kind of, we pull each other aside when work or touring allowed to go, hey, will you pray for this one of my kids, or will you pray for that one? Or I can't say anything that's going on, but just help me by praying for me.
Yeah.
And then when somebody is continually coming in and out of your life, that's when you see these huge arcing patterns. God's faithfulness. Oh, that kid that was struggling for a decade, now they've got 2 kids. It's just like, woo! So a lot of it is just kind of a slow. We've just always been in a near orbit with each other. Mm-hmm. And probably because we had the same management company. Mm-hmm. And so that was sort of a natural way to be connected with we went to the same church years ago.
Yeah. But I think as your kids get older too, that changes the dynamics of, we're busy. Mm-hmm. Now, not only kids, but grandkids.
Yeah.
And there's just a lot of stuff going on, so anytime that we get to sort of come and do something together, it's like, whew, wow.
Did you think that when you guys first met, that God's got something here that I don't know what it is yet, but something's going to happen with this friendship?
I knew she was special the first time I saw her. So that was just the deal. I mean, I just knew that there's something special about this girl. I honestly thought I'd scared her off, because I was so hyper. And I think really the first time we actually sat down to write together, I played her 5 ideas in 60 seconds or less. And I was literally bouncing off the walls. And I remember leaving that day going, I'm not sure we'll ever write a song together. So I was just out of control, but whatever. But I still am hyper, but not quite as hyper as I was back then. You remember that well, don't you?
Oh my gosh, yes. And also, Michael would be, oh, I've got this new music, or what about this? And it really was great as a lyricist to be given a melody of his. And you've kind of gone through different stages of working with different people, and especially when you were touring with Wayne Kirkpatrick, I was like, oh my gosh, he's only ever going to call Wayne now. But then Wayne would call me, hey, you want to go write? And it feels to me that it's the context of work that has provided the opportunity to make memories.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's good.
Yeah.
And it is the context of touring or songwriting or being in the studio. And sometimes family is a big part of that picture. Sometimes it's a little part of the picture. I remember I had never been on a cruise since I was a child. And you said, hey, will you come do like a midnight songwriter thing? No pressure, just come. And I wound up bringing 2 of my kids on the cruise. And my daughter, Sarah, wound up loving your girls. And to me, I'm like, no, I remember praying for Michael and Debbie to get pregnant. But our children were not in the same circle. Mm-hmm. But then being on that tour, and they're like, we love each other. So it's not like we are neighbors that have had the barbecue in the backyard, because there's something that's so intense about your road family. There really, many times, is a bit of a separation that when you're home, you invest in your time and energy in your home family. But anybody that's ever been on the road knows that there's a closeness with your road family that is, they share a big part of your life.
Right.
And so it's fun as our kids get to know each other through one set of circumstances or another. But I am very aware of his children. I can't keep up with all of his grandkids, but it does make you feel like you kind of have a bird's eye view. How are they doing? Okay, how are they? And I've always felt like you knew my children.
Absolutely.
Yeah, even if you weren't Uncle Michael to them, it was just like I knew that he had my back praying for him, and yeah.
What was it like over the years when you guys went through your individual personal stuff? What did you do to get through the stuff that you went through?
Well, there would be nothing in the entire world that would make me want to turn my back on his best friend.
That's right.
So come hell or high water or whatever, I mean, we're just there for each other, you know? We've all had our personal tragedies and triumphs, and so I think when one is going through that, you know, she'd probably be one of the first people who called. I'd be the same way, or sort of just being there for each other on the road in the midst of the stuff that was going on. I think we remember that. We don't have to rehash all that, but just being there for each other, just going, I got your back. Whatever you need, I just got your back.
Yeah. One thing, this is totally other than, but you inspired me to memorize scripture. And
thanks to Don Finto.
Thanks to Don Finto, yeah. But, you know, I mean, just as far as hard times, in recent years, most of our hard times individually have been wrapped around our children. So, of course, we're going to sit here with duct tape over our mouths. But there have been times with one or the other of us, it's been like, I can't give you any details. I'm dying. That's it. And then a year later, okay, remember last year? Oh my gosh. You just have to be so respectful of your children, you know?
Yeah, and when your kids are good, you're good. When they're not, you're not on some level. And so it's like you die for your kid.
Yeah.
You want them to be whole, you know? But gosh, I think about the stuff I went through. Oh my gosh. I mean, on some level, it doesn't even compare to what some of the stuff my kids went through, you know? So thank God for praying mom and dad.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of parents, also because we were so young when we met each other, we really had a sense of each other's mom and dad.
We did, absolutely.
And watching our parents, your mom is the
Still
last one standing.
Yes, she is.
I know. But like seeing Barbara backstage at the Nashville arena when everyone was celebrating 35 years for Michael's career. And I just think all the great food I've eaten that she cooked, just, you know, mama to the whole world. And to see her at all the different stages of her life, it's just tenderizing.
It is. It is. And I knew Amy's mom and dad very well because we all went to Belmont together. You know? And oh gosh, the memories are a mile long.
Take me back to that period and paint the picture of what that place is for those across the country.
Amy was there before I was. I think she can paint it probably a little better than I can because you were there in the mid-'70s with Brown. And
this is what, music, 16th and...
Corner of 16th and Grand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In Nashville.
In Nashville. And it was an old Church of Christ that had hired a professor from Lipscomb. He was the Bible teacher there, the preacher. This really began probably in 1972, 73. My older sisters had come home from school in Boston and started going to church there. So the preacher, Don Finto, he just was such an incredible teacher. And it just intersected in Nashville. I mean, so many things were going on musically. The Johnny Cash show was happening. So an influx of all kinds of music, all sorts of music culture. And that church was catty corner across from a bar, which most churches just aren't on the same corner as a bar. And it was, you know, Music Row, Studio Row, 16th Avenue. It was just hopeful songwriters, publishing companies, record companies. And then this church that was vibrant and had a coffee shop next door. But this was like, they had all these artisans, a stained glass window, a stained glass artisan, woodworking. I mean, it was the hippie times. And then there was a band made up of people from that fellowship group that started playing at the coffee shop. So the coffee shop also was like a bookstore and sold Christian music, but it was all very embedded culturally in the music scene. It just happened to be a Church of Christ, which especially in the early 70s, mid-70s, was not, you know, it was still like no instrumental music, but then they had this coffee shop that had such a diverse constituency. Not to mention that one street behind the church was where the project started, the Edgehill community. And so I mean, that church it was a dog and pony show. You never knew who was going to show up. You know, it was very welcoming. And there were crazy people and there were conservative people. And one of my favorite stories, I was standing right next to the Don Vinto, the preacher, at the front of the church. And a woman came in and said, "Preacher, I take my clothes off for a living. Can I come to church here?" And he said, "You give your heart to Jesus and he will tell you when and when not to take your clothes off." Anyway, it just felt like such a mix of people. It was an exciting, vibrant place. A lot of kids coming in, high school and college kids that were wanting to get off drugs, that were wanting to experience something bigger than the cultural religion they had grown up with. But then, you know, the drug scene was not the payoff. And so many people had a real encounter with Jesus. And it was blue jeans and bare feet and flowers in the hair and people sitting in the windowsills and music.
Yeah, lots of music.
And so I started going there in 74. I was 13.
Amazing.
Yep.
And is that where you decided to sing?
Well, you know, so everybody from following my sister's example started going there. And my dad and mom, he was a deacon at West End Church of Christ. And anyway, so that whole group of parents were probably younger than we are now, Michael.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, but they would, you know, before social media, your church community, especially if it was a vibrant, welcoming community that involved all these cottage industries and music and people meeting together. My parents had a pool in their backyard. My dad was a doctor, and I can't count the number of times there were baptisms in the backyard.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. And so, you know, and I had sisters in college, so there kind of a wild party happening, and then clean up, here comes a baptism. I mean, it was just like, but I was at a Bible study or kind of a potluck dinner at a couple's house. And I said, I wrote a song, and it was a song about faith. And I, you know, innocently, I think I was 15, and I asked, could I sing this at church? And, you know, gong, 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 gong.
At Belmont?
I think they had an elders meeting about it.
Oh, really?
Oh, wow. I mean, yeah. And I heard the first, yeah.
He was the first one with a musical instrument. That's that time,
in that
right?
church.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. You
Shook things up.
Yeah, she sure did.
But, you know, it was just so family, beautifully communal with people from all walks of life. You know, the intellectual doctors, lawyers, street people. I mean, it was so eclectic. And I think that's one thing that made it such a vibrant community, because there were people there that had great financial need and people there that could help meet that need. There were wealthy people that were just spiritually bereft and poor people that were so full of mercy. And it's like how all those lines kept zigzagging back and forth. It just really knitted together a beautiful community.
I mean, to me, that's the kind of church that you want to be a part of.
Yeah.
Is where everybody's welcome, where the pastor's saying, I don't care if you're a prostitute, I don't care if you're a drug addict, come on in. And so that's my kind of church. And I love that.
I agree.
I love that. It's a beautiful.
Diverse.
Yeah.
Lots of color.
I mean, what do we think we're going to see in heaven? You know?
We're going to see that.
Oh,
That's
man,
right.
I remember one time, I can't remember if it was the husband or the wife that got up, you know, it was like confession time. And somebody got up front and was like, I just can't hold it anymore. And they were having an affair. And the other one was in the crowd. And I mean, there were times that the young men would like somebody, just run out there screaming. And somebody would just like grab them, just intercept them.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, yeah. I mean, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, you did not want to miss a service because you didn't know what was going to come down.
Yeah.
So, and even as a teenager, you didn't want to miss. That's pretty incredible.
Yes.
Especially in this day and time.
Yes.
My girls, I have 4 daughters, and they all had to be in church. Whenever the doors were open, we were in church. There was, at that time, I mean, my oldest is 37. My youngest is 23. So that was many years ago when they were home. There was a little bit of legalism, I would say. But until we found the freedom of Christ, and then that's when it all changed. And so I see my own children, as they've gotten older, find their own faith to figure out, why do I believe this? But they look back and say, my best memories, Mommy, were that you always made me be in church, because there were worse places I could have been. And I just think there's such a great legacy that our parents give us. I didn't have parents that did that, but I wanted to create that for my own children. Yeah. I see the fruit of it today.
So neat. Yeah. I did not create that for my children, because partly because we just were on a bus so much when they were little. And
my dad was in his 20s, and he was a pastor in Columbus, built a church. And he had a revival one summer in the 60s where he hired these guys with long hair, and they had drums. And I remember the church board called a special meeting.
Yeah.
So I totally relate to what you're talking about, the church board thing. We have both come close to being thrown out by the church board. Now, that's really cool that you guys, you've grown up together and you've supported each other. And I really appreciate you spending some time with us. And I can't wait to see your Christmas show again this year and every year to come.
Thank you.
And you're such a great encouragement to us all. And I just want you to know how much we appreciate you.
Thank you. We appreciate you.
Yeah, and I've never met you guys till today one-on-one, but I think I know we know a lot of the same people in the circles, and there's musicians in my family, and I have always heard the most amazing things about both of you, who you are as people, and just how nice, genuine, authentic people you are. So it's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You know what, David? I don't know if we'll be friends in 40 years, because we'll probably be dead. But if we weren't dead, I wonder if we would be. I mean, what a friendship they have.
This is supposed to be a joyous podcast for Christmas, and you're talking about we're dead. You're dead to me. You're dead to me.
Well, no, this was really fun. I enjoyed this interview so much. I think the world of both of them. And my gosh, we were in the room today with Michael W. Smith and Amy Grant. It doesn't get much better than that.
Yeah, they're two of my favorites. And I know those of you listening, that was a real treat, wasn't it?
For all of us.
And for those of you who have listened to this entire podcast, we are going to reward you by telling you a little something that very few know until right now. We have just added to the Keep the Faith channel on YouTube the Keep the Faith, Amy Grant, and Michael W. Smith Christmas Holiday Special, complete with all of their favorite Christmas songs. Right now, exclusively on YouTube. Hey, we want to wish you all a Merry Christmas, and you've been listening to Contagious Influencers of America from the producers of Keep the Faith.
And you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram, or go to KeepTheFaith.com.
Now, if you enjoy the podcast, please go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe, rate, and review Contagious Influencers of America.
And don't forget to join us next week, and of course, thank you for listening.
Right here on CIA Contagious Influencers of America, I'm David Sams, along with
Victoria Robinson.
And remember, go out there and live that life in living color, because it sure is a heck of a lot more interesting than living it in black and white. See you next time.